We are on Unit 2, which talks about informative skills. So, informative reading, informative writing, and how to do those things well. Lesson 1 is going to be all about writing a good introduction for your informative pieces. Speaking of introductions, here's your introduction to this introduction lesson. Did you know that in 2000, the average human attention span was only 12 seconds? It has been going down kind of steady like a rock. In 2013, with probably all the smartphones that have come out and all the other things that can steal our attention, the average human attention span is 8 seconds. Compare that to a goldfish, where the average goldfish attention span is 9 seconds. So us humans have fallen behind the goldfish in how long we are able to pay attention. This is a bit of a problem. And I want you to think a little bit about what does this statistic show the importance of a good introduction? Well, the answer to that would be if you are not able to capture the attention of your human audience, because unfortunately we're not writing to goldfish, we're writing to humans, you're going to lose them. They're not going to read your piece at all, or they're just not even really going to read it deeply. They're just going to kind of skim through it. So let's talk about a good introduction. What does a good introduction do? There's 3 parts to it, and this is a note-taking page, just so remember that's what this means in the corner. So what does a good introduction do? The first thing it does, like we mentioned, is hook the audience. So like I said on the last slide, if you don't catch your audience's attention, they will lose interest quickly. And you could have a lot of great things to say the rest of the paper, but doesn't matter, they're not going to be reading it. The next thing we're going to learn how to do is to build a bridge. A bridge talks about your hook and what does it have to do with the main point of your paper. Without a bridge, whatever you do here might really seem pointless. The last thing then would be sharing a main point. So your readers should know why they're going to be reading this. What are they going to learn? If you don't give them a reason to keep reading, they will stop reading. So as far as the first strategy, hooking the audience, there are 4 strategies that you could use to catch your audience's attention so that they will continue reading. Strategy number 1 is to tell a story. People love stories, and that's often a great way to really hook their attention. So if you're writing about a historical event, maybe pick up a little story inside that event. Or if you are writing about your favorite video game, maybe tell a story about when you first got a hold of that video game. Strategy number 2 is to make an interesting fact or statement. There's a reason why the Guinness Book of World Records is a top-selling book year after year. People just love hearing interesting facts. So if you have an interesting fact about the event or topic that you're covering, that'd be a great way to catch the attention. You can always just do some quick Google searches to see what's available out there too. Strategy number 3 is a quote. Quotes often get people to think, and when you get your audience thinking, you've got their attention. Then the last strategy to think about would be to ask a question. The reason why asking a question is great is because, once again, it gets your audience thinking. It shows that they are a part of being the reader, like they're being active readers. And when you have an active reader that's thinking and participating with your reading, they'll be paying attention a lot more. So let's give it a try. I would like you to pause, and maybe you don't know a whole lot about the Boston Tea Party. If you need to do a little bit of looking up, you certainly could. But I would like you to think about how you could use 2 strategies from this list here to hook your audience to the topic of the Boston Tea Party. So pause this video until you are able to write a few things down, and then we can continue. The next thing we want to do is to establish a main point in your paper. So the main point, to write this down, is the lesson that you will be showing or proving for the rest of your piece. And this diagram below here really shows why main points are so important. When you don't have a main point, your paper is really going to feel like a bunch of disorganized and random information. And that's just not what our society needs right now. We need something clear and kind of organized that flows. Something that looks like this. When you do have a main point, that's what it looks like. So I often get this in middle school, and they don't say this exactly, but this is kind of what they do say, is I'm going to share fun and interesting facts about the crossing of the Delaware. That's the topic I've been kind of focusing on for this lesson, when Washington crosses the Delaware. Well, so fun and interesting facts. Do you have a point to prove about it? Are you just going to share some things that I might find interesting, but I have no reason to find interesting? When you say something like that, and just random fact after random fact, it's really hard to follow. However, if you have a main point, like this for example, the crossing of the Delaware River was a huge risk that paid off for Washington in a major way. So now I got something to work with. When I write my paper going forward, I'm going to talk about why it was such a huge risk. I'm going to talk about why it worked and why it went well. And that set myself up really well for the whole rest of the paper. So you could do this with a lot of different topics. And I'm just going to maybe rattle off a few different ideas just to kind of get you seeing how you can construct a main point. So instead of telling random facts about the Boston Tea Party during the American Revolution, my main point could be that the Boston Tea Party was an act of defiance that angered the British and brought about a lot of punishment. So that gives me some things to talk about, how much of an act of defiance it was and what was the British response. Another topic in the Revolutionary War is the Battle of Bunker Hill, and that's pretty early in the war. If I were to have a main point about the Battle of Bunker Hill, it would be the Battle of Bunker Hill made the Americans realize how far the British were willing to go in the battle. If you ever read about the Battle of Bunker Hill, you really see how many charges the British do, and they killed a lot of Americans in that battle, although the Americans also fought very bravely. The Declaration of Independence, instead of sharing random facts about that, you could say the Declaration of Independence was very contested, and it took a lot of different kind of backdoor deals to get it done. So that would be my main point that I could work off of the whole rest of the paper. Same thing with the crossing of the Delaware. You could say Washington took a huge risk, but it paid off in a major way. That was my main point from before. So you see that it doesn't need to be random information. You can have good main points that allow you to write for the next of the piece. Now let's talk about the part in the middle, the building of the bridge. So what does your hook have to do with your main point? The bridge shows that. Here's something without a bridge, for example. Private Montgomery's teeth rattled from the brisk, cold evening. He couldn't feel his feet. Yet he pushed the boat off with the others, navigating through the blocks of ice that stood in the way. So that's a hook, right? I'm telling a story. It's caught your attention because you're wondering what's going to happen to Private Montgomery. But then what if you suddenly jump to your main point in the same introduction paragraph? If I went from here to just now saying this, the crossing of the Delaware was a huge risk that paid off for Washington in a major way. If this was my introduction paragraph where I say this and then suddenly this, it's going to really confuse the reader. They're going to be like, oh, wait, what? Why are you talking about this and now you're talking about that? It's missing a bridge. Something is missing in the middle between these two things. So what is it? It's the bridge. Now let's read this paragraph with this bridge in the middle. Private Montgomery's teeth rattled from the brisk, cold evening. He couldn't feel his feet. Yet he pushed the boat off with the others, navigating through the blocks of ice that stood in the way. Little did Private Montgomery know he was about to take part in a battle on the other side of the river that would alter the course of American history. The crossing of the Delaware was a huge risk that paid off for Washington in a major way. So you see how this bridge kind of talks about, it brings Private Montgomery in. It brings that together with this. It bridges it, right? That's why bridge is a very fitting name for this. So when you do that, your reader goes, ah, I see why you told this story here. It does show that this is a risk and that it's going to be a challenge. So I would like you to do the same thing with this paragraph here. So in a bit, I'd like you to pause, and I would like you to label the hook, the bridge, and the main point of this introduction. So I'll read it out loud. Men, you are all marksmen. Don't one of you fire until you see the white of their eyes. These were words spoken by Israel Putnam to his American soldiers stationed on Breed's Hill. Before them charged 6,000 British soldiers who were determined to take the hill from them. Putnam's advice and the advantage of the high ground allowed the Americans to hold off the initial attacks, but the British were determined to take the hill at any cost. The Battle of Breed's Hill, otherwise known as the Battle of Bunker Hill, showed the Americans how far the British were willing to go to end the rebellion of the American colonies. So take a moment here, highlight the different parts, and we'll see if you agree with me. So please pause the video. So here's what I had. I felt like this was a quote, right, that kind of caught the attention of the audience. Here's my main point, that the Battle of Breed's Hill, otherwise known as the Battle of Bunker Hill, showed the Americans how far the British were willing to go. And then this kind of brings the two things together. It kind of shows where they are at. It shows what kind of battle is about to be fought. And it even kind of gives a little hint to the main point, where the British were determined to take the hill at any cost. So that bridge there really puts the two pieces together. So right now I'd like you to also have some practice here. I would like you to write an introduction for the Boston Tea Party. I would like you to include a hook of your choice, and you can use the one you used before, a bridge, and then a thesis or a main point. And if you want to use the thesis that I had about the Boston Tea Party, you certainly could. Otherwise, maybe do a little research if you need to. Yeah, just try your best and see how it goes. So you could pause the video right now and get to work. Just so you're aware on how the scoring works for these pieces, you do get scored when you do writing groups pieces and also on your report card for introductions and conclusions. You'll notice that when you write an introduction, I want you to be able to hook the audience using one of these strategies. I want you to be able to have a bridge between the hook and the main point. And I want you to be able to write a clear and concise, meaning not too long, thesis or main point, and you can summarize their list of points that will be later supported. So this is what I'm hoping you can be able to do by the end of the school year.